large social media platforms. I personally very much believe in the role of face-to-face collaborations, and my main activities is kind of building communities or whatever, enabling an environment through hands-on activities where people beyond whatever background it is kind of just get to know each other like children. So when we build a little device like a microscope or some blinking LEDs, we're all kids again, so it doesn't matter who we were before, and we work on a table. Can you give me this is there, and you start just to interact a bit different than when we watch presentations. So I show you some slides just to show you a bit an image of how I meanwhile work. I'm part of a network that is called bacteria.org. You can check the website, it's offline. We had some server issues. I talk a bit about temporary labs, which is something similar to a workshop, but it's much more practice-based. How we involve community, and generally it's about biolabs or how to make cheese. So when I say lab, we all have different definitions what it is. We saw some labs up there. I was trained in a nanotechnology, material science, like interfacing high-end nanotech devices with living systems, growing cells on it and putting proteins on it, building biosensors. So that's what I got my PhD on back in early 2000. So this was my lab. Really miserable working conditions. No sandwiches allowed. Nanotech lab, so all the gear we wore, similar to biology, is to protect our stuff we work on. Not because it's dangerous to us, but we are dangerous to the experiment. But then later I started teaching. I left academia in 2006, but still, was very enthusiastic in teaching. And my course I developed was this idea of building a laboratory for doing nanotechnology with my students. They were biomedical engineers, but the first time they did some practice. And because I wasn't a researcher at the university, nor was there an ongoing nanotech research, I thought, okay, what should I do? So let's build a lab. So the student program was consecutive over years, building upon all the students' projects. How can we set up a nanotechnology lab to do student training? And I focused a lot already on this idea of sharing information and open source. So the students should write documentation of their prototypes that the next year students can build upon, with the goal that we make games using living systems like tardigrades or nematodes, using do-it-yourself nanotech gear, and build some kind of a game. Because I couldn't involve them in my research, because I didn't do any research, so I thought, okay, let's make a game, instead of coming up with real-world experiments that are made up. It kind of worked, so we built microfluidic devices, we built our own laser cutters, spin coaters, microscopes, and so forth. I learned this kind of new do-it-yourself through a community I joined. This is wrong. The lab is since 2009, but I joined the community in 2006. We just founded it. It's a community that has a strong enthusiasm on building their own synthesizers. So I completely left my academic world, and I was unemployed, and I got really engaged in do-it-yourself electronics. This was also when a lot of new, affordable, and easy-to-use hardware came out, similar to the Arduino, for those who knows it. So I was just from the beginning there. And we started a physical space, a community electronics, like hobby space. They call them sometimes maker spaces. And I was really inspired that I got to work with people from different age groups. We were hosted in the Social Youth Center. I started to do workshops with kids. We had our mission with the Swiss Mechatronic Art Society to bring together also these old school electronic hobbyists, like radio amateurs, with young media artists that want to do interactive installations, make sound, and so forth. And it kind of worked. Our main skill, what brought the community together in this space, is we had a proper etching station to make PCBs, to make electronics. A lot of hobbyists they prefer to work at home. They're kind of a bit autistic. But somehow they got into trouble with their wife if they do this chemistry in the kitchen. So we have this properly installed, and this is what brings people there. It was not the infrastructure, the technologies we provided. In Switzerland we have enough money. Your private hobby room is much better equipped than our community space. So we had to get some other value, not like a fab lab where the idea is that the infrastructure, laser cutters, printers, attracts people. In a rich country like Switzerland, this will not work. So we have to create some other social value to bring people together. This is a bit an exception, the chemistry, that people did not have at home sometimes, but it was also just Tuesday evenings, having beers, and having a creative environment. And through that, we established a community that is called the Swiss Mechatronic Art Society, which is, I think, covering a lot of the old school maker scene in Switzerland. Meanwhile, the scene has grown gigantically. The other method that we have had for this community was summer camps. We organize every summer a 1 week kind of holiday for geeks, where we go to a beautiful house in the Swiss mountains. We bring all the equipment from our space there, and people can work on whatever they want. We go hiking, and we live in the same house. Again, it's this co-presence that I believe in. And meanwhile, there is, let's say, about 100 people that feel connected to that community, and there is a mail list of makers in Switzerland that we are running, which has a few thousand. What did I want to say? Maybe you can interrupt me, also have a question. But so this was quite a different world that I entered, and what I enjoy very much is this very broad interdisciplinary approach, but a very shared enthusiasm to build things, to learn from each other and so on.
So you already had a community that you could tap into to sort of provide...
No, we started in 2006.
Okay.
There was a very small group of DIY synth makers.
So how did you let everyone know about it though? How did you stimulate from the very beginning?
Running around town, talking to people,
Yep.
giving flyers.
Yep.
We have a workshop on the weekend, and especially summer camp, I think, has established a more closer community.
Yeah.
Like living together for a week, you remember this for the rest of your life. The workshops also, but just being together, cooking together, as an example.
So if you wanted to develop a photo sync community, would you go to the park on a nice day and just go around to the people that are obviously enjoying the park, and would you target it that way? I'm trying to figure out how I would do this in Australia in my neck of the woods to get it.
PhotoSync is a very specialized tool. I want to talk about it. Not that specialized, but still it's more focused than electronics. But it could be like similar to these events that you locally make an event, even if it's the first time 3 or 4 people, and you go for a week into the forest. You camp and you hack out for PhotoSync. So instead of just let's say, call it a bit more formal workshop setting, that you bring, the first time it's 2 or 3 people. Of course, having devices helps in that specific case because it is connected to devices, which is in fact a good way to build communities. And this is local kind of version, but I'll talk about some other stuff. So again, what are labs? This is where it comes from. I'll just go briefly through. These are places to work together, I would say. There's some style. So a lot of labs look like this. They are presented like this. There has been recently a kind of a rise of new community laboratories that do not look like this. There has been the whole do-it-yourself biology movement that kind of came out as well. Hobbyists that maybe studied biology but wanted to work on creative environments in their homes, in their garages, in their kitchens, and I've been kind of since the beginning involved also in that movement. So with my background in nanobiotech and a newly found enthusiasm in do-it-yourself electronics communities, I could bring these 2 topics together when I also entered these discussions on do-it-yourself biology. And so this is how one very famous lab in the Bay Area looks like. These are community biology labs. I think we can learn from these environments also and apply it to the PhotoSync environment. Again, it is a bit more a relaxed atmosphere for a biology lab. It looks like a normal biology lab, but we have beer. It doesn't have to have beer. I have to say that free beer and biology bias, it leads to a more male population than coffee and tea. Simple things. If we also want to look into gender, the community building for male environments works very well with beer. It is a fact. And you have to be careful how to communicate your kind of social evenings. If it's a beer and biology, it's different than I don't know, kombucha and tea. Fermentation we use a lot also, for example. We make sauerkraut, we make other fermentations. Because we address other interests than we drink a lot of beer. So with Bacteria we started at an extremely interesting event that I want to describe as a format event. It's called Interactivos. It is run by an organization that is called Media Lab Prado. So a lot of places in Europe already had something called media labs for the last 20 years. They're not hacker spaces, they're called media labs. These are usually public spaces for people to work with new digital tools. I don't know if you know Soros, this rich guy all over Eastern Europe. He put money to establish this kind of computer learning environment, let's say. This was in the 90s. I don't know, maybe you know this also in Croatia. There was also these media labs. Meanwhile, they're very related to hacker spaces, and a lot of these media labs had a focus on early open source developments. These were places where workshops on different, install Linux and so happens. So had Media Lab Prado. They got inspired by methods from this software development that people come together as a sprint and program new tools together, and organized since 2006 a collaborative prototyping event called Interactivos. And again, it's this co-presence, it's this durational event. This is a 10 days or 2 weeks event where up to 100 people work in, let's say, 10 groups on different projects, prototyping an idea. There's always a topic. It can be more software-based, it can be more art-based, it can be more environmental sensing-based, and so forth. In 2009, the title was Garage Science. This was inspiring for me, yeah. This guy was hosting one of the nodes called Garage Astrobiology. They bring together programmers, hackers, architects, designers, we call it makers, engineers. And if you bring these interdisciplinary groups together, that durational part, I think, is extremely important. Just we come from different worlds, and to really get something useful out, it needs more time if people come from different disciplines. The topics at 2009, I think, were very pioneering. So we have this open source idea anyway embedded in the Media Lab Prado. Everything that we worked on, what we were asked to document everything on the Wiki. The topics we worked was building a do-it-yourself drone for activist monitoring of demonstrations with an Arduino. It was building a 3D printer kind of RepRap model. It was mapping environmental issues with balloons to be implemented for kids' workshops. It was building a little astrobiology laboratory. So a lot of topics that are now quite prominent, I think, in the maker environment and activist discussions have been pioneering at that event. I was blown away. I didn't know that there was all this interesting stuff. At the discussion there with my friend Yashas, who is an educator in India, we started with Bacteria, together with Andy Gracie, with the idea similar that we could also make a platform, a community platform, for beginners to start working with biology. What the inspirations we got was at that time already growing Arduino community. So who knows the Arduino? I will look into it. This is my do-it-yourself laboratory that we built in the toilet there. Unlike garages, I prefer to build laboratories in kitchens and toilets, also as kind of a more neutral space, gender. The garage is a very male-dominant and American phenomenon of the hobbyist, and kitchens are better. Yeah, this one is good. So, looking at where we set up our initiative, there is student communities. In biology, there was extremely successful synthetic biology communities meanwhile. That community has grown through a student competition. This is also a very, I think, successful format everywhere in the world. Robotics competitions where, you know, from different universities. This was also inspiring me for my class, in fact, the Nano Lab class. Thousands of people, and they have online platforms, then they go to this competition. Competitions are definitely one way. Also for photosync, it could be an option that you have some kind of you know, the photosync geek of the year, of the month, or stuff like this. Especially for students, summer projects in different schools that could be kind of connected to the device and the methods and the competition. We work also closely with artists and gallery spaces that exhibit artists working with biology, living tissue, plants. But what we did with Bacteria was we tried to use more that hackerspace model, similar to what I showed you before, that it's kind of, you just can come and make some experiment without being too fancy or have fun while doing it, sharing stuff on the Wiki and this kind of thing. But there's lots of other communities, in fact, around amateur biology. And these are existing communities that we can tap into. There is these naturalist societies, they're like 300 years old. In Switzerland, each canton has their own naturalist society. They're mostly retired teachers. They look at some mushrooms and stuff. But these could be also interesting communities to tap into. And I've been trying in my hometown, small rural Switzerland. It's kind of tougher. These are relatively conservative, very established naturalist society. But I think it's an interesting idea. Then there's a lot of activist communities that are already out there and are extremely well organized, maybe, or connected through, and usually this is specific topics or regions. So, gardening communities, well, these are huge communities that are already there. They may be in your own neighborhood meet once per month. So we figured out also that we're not the first ones that does kind of hobby, amateurish biology. And maybe it's interesting to look into these other communities that are out there. So what we came up with was, in the beginning, a project to set up a knowledge base for beginners to start to work with biology. We had, I have to talk about the Arduino, but we had the idea that it would be cool to have an Arduino for biology. I have to talk more about it. And this means we need a website. So primarily it was setting up a website that has a large wiki for people to look, find instructions on how to get started with simple biological experimentation. It was all about sharing knowledge, writing instructions, and developing workshops, physical gatherings again, to bring these topics to people. This is connected to citizen science, and especially the tools we are building, like cheap microscopes or other simple environmental sensors, could be very useful for citizen science. Being inspired by the open source culture, we try to make everything open source. We also develop open source hardware, maybe not on the level of engineering as the multi-spec, but similar. I have to say, it didn't really work. So this idea of having this one knowledge base for all topics of biology was not such a successful thing. So it did not work that we just set up a wiki and thousands of people will flock and do stuff. What it then turned out to be, it was more a global network. That's because we started in India and Indonesia with our projects, besides Switzerland and other places in Europe. It started to be a very face-to-face global network of people sharing a similar enthusiasm and some value of radical transdisciplinarity, of sharing and stuff. The network was established through face-to-face interactions, through events, workshops, or other gatherings like summer camps. And the number of people is maybe 50 that are kind of feeling we're part of Bacteria. So it's not a huge community at all. And I think one reason we did not manage to get a large user community base is because we did not have one topic. We did not have one device. We did not have, so it was because of this radical transdisciplinarity. What is it? While the mushroom collectors of Michigan, they're clear. I like mushrooms, I live in Michigan, I come every year to the meeting. So that did not work so well. And I think with the photo sync, there is a potential there that is related to other projects I want to show, that it's easier to communicate what is the community around. But I have to say, these other learnings of physical gatherings, durational gatherings, going a hike to get together during also a workshop setting, and the transdisciplinarity, I think, can be applied as well. So we did like half of them, maybe it was me, the other half other people in the network. We did more than 100 workshops. This is a map, by the way. What?
You did it on purpose.
Who says what's up and
Down under.
You did it on purpose.
what is in the center of the world?
Australia.
What is in the center of the world? Indonesia. Having that opportunity to travel and do workshops, it really made me change the way I looked at the world. And a lot of the way, we are very much from the media, from our education, there is a strong Eurocentrism, I would call it, or US centrism here maybe, or Western centrism. I got quite humble in my meanwhile that you can look at the world from another side, and the majority world, it's kind of a term to describe what used to be called the third world or developing countries, call it the majority world. This is where most of people live, and also the conditions where most of people live. They have a different view on the world. They also have whatever, we don't know. And I was lucky to have this opportunity, and I think partially I'm happy to contribute to the project, to also connect with some of my connections. Sub-Saharan Africa, I haven't had much to do yet. Personally, I was once in Kenya for a low-cost diagnostics conference for neglected tropical diseases. But interestingly is also, where do the majority of the world live? There is kind of this spot, I think here in this part of India, here on the coast. It's about this, like, half a billion. Indonesia, if you don't know, has 250 million population, 17,000 islands, 500 languages. They had kingdoms that were controlling the spice trade all over the world. We had never heard of that. So it's quite interesting to look at other places. My own method, and especially with my friend Urs Gaudens, to build also communities, hasn't worked so well. We also thought it's good to have communities around a specific device. So we did a lot of do-it-yourself laboratory equipment, basic things like photospectrometers, microscopes, centrifuges, PCR machines, high voltage controllers for running gel electrophoresis, stuff like that. And that got us kind of most known. But again, because it wasn't one, we also did other kind of collecting flower workshops. So it was not just one device, it was not just the PCR. So the wiki is, no one goes to the wiki because it's too much information that's not connected. But so this is what we set up. We set up a wiki page, it's offline at the moment. I think we're most known for this generic lab equipment stuff that is combining our maker-fabber experience with the newly found enthusiasm of biology, both especially Urs as an engineer. He did know little about biology, but he knows how to build very good machines and very low cost and so forth. I want to show you a little movie. So the way we started organizing event was very much inspired also by being now part of art circles, by being part of activist groups and other communities. So to develop new content, the wiki by itself, the software platform, it's simple, did not work. So we thought, okay, we have to organize more physical gatherings to develop new workshops, new prototypes. So we started every year to do a bacteria lab, inspired by Interactivos. First time we did the same mistake, 3 days. The moment we got to know each other, people had to leave. So we went back in the later stages to do at least 10 days. And this was Bacteria Lab in Indonesia, which for me was a great opportunity to introduce my local partners that have hosted me for years and have an extremely strong sense of community to other individuals and groups I knew in Europe and the US and people from all over the world. So we had about 100 people, 30 international, and the rest was locals. And we did field trips, and yes, there's a lot of smoking going on in Indonesia.
From generation to generation, the unique story that is believed by the people is that the genie and other invisible inhabitants of the area, which is considered as the genie soldiers, lives at the heart. It is also believed that these meta creatures are required to help the people in preserving the forest. The forests have always been protected by local villagers and recently also by the Greentech community. In a way, protecting also means conserving. This note aims to document the diversity in the forest by setting up a lab in the forest to explore the forest ecological system and research it in a nomadic style along the narrative and knowledge from people living in the area. The bold ambition of this note is to scientifically prove the local wisdom of the use of plants and its combination for better human life.
Well said. I show now maybe more we can talk a bit. Yeah. So this last thing that I showed was again a very interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary approach, and we had the luck, and I think this is why it's good to work with existing communities, to work with a group called Greentech Partners of, and this is student groups. These are student groups in Indonesia that are kind of connected to the university, but also not. Indonesia has a program to develop the country, kind of with the idea that every student has to go for 3 months, for half a year, to work for some social good, meaning building schools, helping out farmers in the rural areas, and so forth. And a lot of these experiences are picked up by some individuals, and they start to continuously work maybe with that specific place. So the forest we went was one of these students. He started the community, 200-300 people, and they regularly do some environmental issues, they grow plants and trees. So there is existing student groups there that, for me, coming from Switzerland, it's impressive just the size, the numbers are very different, both in India and Indonesia. It's easily 200 people that you get on a Sunday morning. And this is just one small community from one university. And I think this could be very interesting existing communities to tap in. For those who don't know, just briefly I want to show you some projects that we can have in a discussion to look why some work, why not. Again, if the community is around one single device, the Arduino is a great example. This is an education platform for reading sensors, connecting things to the computer, like the photosync. This is the basic module that could do everything. I think the fact it was successful, there was lots of microcontroller educational platforms before, developed by engineers for engineering education. This was specifically developed in an art school. Since the beginning, it was a collaboration of engineers and artists, and it has been massively implemented in educational programs at interaction design and art schools. And I think the success of the Arduino is that early phase. Lots of really creative projects were there. Meanwhile, all engineering schools used the Arduino as an educational platform, but it was aimed as an interaction design artistic platform. And because it was one tool, it had a huge wiki and blog and all that stuff.
I'm going to add one thing to that really quick.
Yeah.
If just to sort of push the point home, if you think that some of this sounds completely far away from what is applicable to you, recognize that Arduino started as completely focused on the art community, right? So this is a tool that was built by and for the art community. that's now the outcome of this, then 7 years later, 8, 10, I don't know, 10 years later, is what drives a really high quality complex instrument like ours. We are using that. So my point is, like, these things seem disconnected today, but they're really not disconnected. Like, these things do eventually transition into each other. That's
And so, yeah, I thought Indonesia has anyway its own culture of community. It's called komunitas. This is how it's a bit a tribal thing that it's not so easy to understand. But I think we can learn a lot from the way communities are organized in these places like Indonesia. I heard about sub-Saharan Africa also. There's a very different idea what is a community, and I think we can learn a lot. We're completely individualistic in the West. We don't understand this anymore. Looking at some other projects, just very briefly, there is another guy in Ann Arbor who developed an educational tool for doing electrophysiology. Nice website, very successful, cheap, low-cost, open hardware for measuring muscles and stuff. But I think he has not managed to create a community that feeds back into the website or development. It's a small group, successful, everybody gets paid, that sells 10 now or 50,000 of these devices. But he doesn't know who are the users. I don't. He couldn't make a website, so I don't know. But it's interesting. It's a very good hardware for education, but somehow it doesn't feed back into what it could be. And we were with the same network. We were looking exactly into similar topics. How can we build communities around one topic? Using a genetically modified organism to measure arsenic. We worked with these Indonesian groups, and also that didn't work so well. The Swiss people did not understand that other aspect that was in the project. But it was also a little fluorometer to measure fluorescence of our bioreporter fluorescent arsenic sensor, and people and communities, so it's not so easy, huh? And another, I think, failed project from the community is, I don't know if you know this, Spectruino. I don't know, also again, Arduino, low-cost, open hardware-inspired project on making a spectrometer. And open source, it says at least open source. I don't know where are the files. I think they're kind of okay, but then it turned into some company by a Hungarian engineer. So it was an engineer at ETH, I think, and he spun off, went back to Hungary somewhere, just selling this. And even if it is maybe partially open hardware, it loses that aspect of that would be a community. I don't know if it's a successful project. I don't know. I don't think so. There's no website hasn't changed for 3-4 years. What else? Yeah, this is a bit what I wanted to show you. The other example is Public Lab as another, I think, very successful project as a platform and as a community. But they did this correctly, I say. They built community around specific devices, very low-cost DIY devices for monitoring with near-infrared cameras, balloons, also spectrometer. That doesn't work. Huh? It doesn't matter, in fact, if your goal is to have a discussion involving activists and neighborhoods in environmental issue, if your goal is discussion, having a device might help, even if it doesn't work. Some of their devices work very well, the cameras work and all that stuff, the balloons work. And they have a strong focus of having fun events together, with balloons, hundreds of people at the beach making images of the oil spills. So their conference is called Barn Raising, so they connect to obviously Southern American very typical social events. They're not called conference, and we did this project in March together with Greg and with Shannon from Public Lab, and I think they have some extremely powerful tools for the community building, maybe not so powerful for real reproducible science experiments. And I think if we learn from these different cultures, from different projects, we could try to design a bit in which direction the photosync community can develop.
Is there any Public Lab community in Australia?
Most probably, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yes.
They have, so Public Lab has about probably 15,000 members at this point. mean, they're really big.
100 mail lists.
How do I find someone in Australia through Public
Just
Lab?
go search on Public
Just
Lab.
search, yeah.
So they have a bunch of mailing lists, and I mean, not all 15,000 are active every day, but they have a very large portion of daily active, monthly active users
There you go.
who are out
More
there.
than 20 people.
Someone has asked already this question, Public Lab Australia.
Okay.
You can open one. It needs a lot of community just work. Having all these mail lists needs people constantly writing emails and making jokes in emails.
Do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't email me.
Sorry.
But then, it's somewhere a map. Public Lab has a very strong base in the US. It has some other places, Latin America, a little bit in other places in the world.
And actually, when we designed our website, we were originally just going to fork Public Lab. We were just going to copy.
And-
Didn't really. That was the original spec of it.
What I mentioned briefly yesterday is the language. French people will not use in English. They want the French platform, especially if it's community, if you work with neighborhoods. It is, at some point, a language issue. So this is another example. It's just full of spectrum that have little scientific value.
But people keep contributing to it, and people keep.
So obviously these lamps, they have lines in the spectrum. It has been proved again and again and again. But then on the other hand, you talk to a guy on the street, he doesn't know. So it has completely its role in that. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
I knew nothing about photosync until last year, 2015 in January, when I was contacted by Dan. Then there's a project at Ramala, Michigan State University, where they have some 100 devices that can measure back here and so here that time. Yeah, so we exchanged emails in May 2015 is when I officially joined the project. Then there are two people that were using photosync in Malawi. Dan introduced photosync to them, but there was not really much work being done like collecting data. So it was ideal for me and Dan work together, Dan here, me in Malawi, so that Dan can tell me things and I can take them with the people in Malawi. That was much better. So after that, I went to one of the people that Dan had already started working with. When I was there, I met another guy. So I introduced that to another guy and he was very excited. And he told me to go to his station. He's an agronomist, but mostly he does irrigation. So after the seed companies, they have released their varieties. Now it's for him to test how these varieties they can cope with the drought. So they have different water regimes that they applied was clients back at his station. There he had also a friend who was doing PhD. That one is testing lines of soybean for drought. So he introduced us to her. So it's like the chain is now growing. Now we are almost 4 people. So the first training, Dan was just telling me on the internet, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. Like enough, I was able to grasp those things. And I was able also to conduct small trainings back home with those people. So I did that. And I also introduced photosync to the university which I graduated from. I have the professor there, my supervisor, and others. So they also interested in professor who then introduced already to him. So he had the device, so it was easy for us just to use the device which was there with the other people. There are also some two students who are sponsored by Magnite, which was also sponsored in PhotoSync. So we also connected to them. They are testing clothing systems with the rotation and intercropping with the maize and the legumes. And trying to see if the clothing system, the rotation and the intercropping with the legumes can try to reduce the amount of inorganic fertilizer to be applied to the maize. Maize is the main crop in Malawi. Almost everyone grows maize. But the soil was their own soils, the way that the soil was. So they require a lot of nitrogen and they fix a lot of phosphorus. So they're trying to see if those cropping systems and try to reduce those things. Yeah. So as of now, we have almost 12 people that are using PhotoSync in Malawi, and we have a good amount of data that we have collected. And this year, because our rainy season starts in late November going to December, and it ends somewhere in March, April. So this rainy season, we are hoping that we can also have a few people joining. We have already started interacting with one. And now when I get home, I'll also introduce a few more. So we are hoping that the community will continue growing. Of course, it doesn't really easy to have those people on board. And those are not the only people that I have tried to introduce PhotoSync to them. I have introduced others, they just it was most of all, I think was they don't really understand the importance of the parameters collected in PhotoSync to their work. So it's very hard to take them on board. And others, for them, maybe it's the first time you hear that there is this ND2, FY2, they have done work in agriculture that they haven't heard anything of this. So it's like we're introducing them in the LSO, new lesson, taking back them to school. So no time for learning new things. Yeah, I think so far that's all I can say. Any questions?
So, so did you have one device? Or did you have multiple devices?
No. So that is almost 5-6 devices.
Yeah, I would say 7.
Yeah, 6 devices. But after I have made some people then send me some devices. So I was keeping almost 4. The rest I was just distributed between the people.
And how long did it take you to train someone to use a device? And then that you could trust that they knew what they were doing?
3-4 days.
Yep.
Almost the first time I will do the introduction, how to get the project, and I'll take them to the field.
Yep.
We'll work data together with 1-2 days. Then after that, mostly they can do. But it's hard to introduce to the old age than to the young ones.
And did you worry the whole time they had the multi-spec? Did you sleep? No.
So did you say it was harder to introduce it to older people, but easy to young?
Yeah.
Because mostly it's the phones, they are supposed to be the touch screen phones, so they are not used to these phones. Yeah.
Did you work with student groups, or these were already usually like?
There are students, technicians from the research stations, and it's hard to work with the technicians from the research station because they are students.
But did the older people understand the concept and the potential? Was it just the tech that they had a problem with?
So what the saying is that I will introduce this to their bosses who are the scientists. But when it starts to breaking data, I break data with the technicians. So even if the technician doesn't understand, but the boss knows the importance of these things. So they will make sure that the data collection should be good in the field.
It's interesting. So it was actually, so it was more important for you to talk to the professors than the technicians, is that true?
Professors, I will introduce the concept.
Yeah.
But when it's then professors, I will do the data analysis project creation, I'll do that with the professors. Yeah. But when I was doing that, the education would be there, but this would be more interested in professors and the scientists. But those they cannot go into the field to collect data. So when it comes to data collection, now it will be more focused on data collections.
It's interesting because just my experience in the US is that it's actually kind of the opposite. Like here, you try to talk to professors and they're usually like too busy, they have a very specific line of focus and they won't think outside of that very much. But you talk to the technicians or grad students and postdocs and they get very excited because they're actually, that's interesting that it's different for you.
One thing that was impressive for me, similar story also, if you have this one professor that supports it, then the students or technician can do lots of stuff. You need this kind of whatever, work with the local hierarchies and that stuff. But one thing is that we have to keep in mind in places, like most places in sub-Saharan Africa and Indonesia, the amount of young people between 15 and 25 is huge. It's huge. There's a very different demographic, and the existing academic system is by far not capable of taking all these highly talented people in them. So what with these other open devices could do, there is lots of people just, the academic system is quite bad in many places. It's a how you call it, flashing lights thing, where it's narrowing down. So if we bring this stuff also into other young generations that can't find a position in university, the technical education is bad, but they're highly talented and self-taught through the internet and wherever, it could be also a way to accelerate it. I heard rumors in Africa especially that the existing systems are a bit difficult to work with, and there's much more potential in another generation that is like 20 years old and just don't believe in the academic path or career anyway. I don't know what you feel or think about that.
Yeah, but I have one student who is very interested in open data access, but that does not apply to his professor. It's very hard to get the other academic data from them, but the students cannot share the data because that would be conflict.
Do you see a lot of interaction between people in Malawi, like, or are they all just using it for their own application, but they're not collaborating? Mostly their own applications.
There will be so many groups doing the same project.
Same stuff.
Yeah. That's very obvious.
One of the problems with the academic system that you point at, a lot of researchers, and I know this is true at Rwanda where he works with students, is professors don't get paid much. So there's a large portion of professors who barely do their job. And then they go out and they get a contract to work for, say, a CG Center or some international initiative where they're a consultant. And then you have to go through the professor to get to the students. It's kind of the way the power structure is currently at the university. But the professor's not there. So it becomes very difficult. You have to target a few professors, and I think that like Moses is one, and you're a former advisor, but a few that actually still at least pretend to believe in the university system and have a little bit of initiative, with the exception of their paycheck.
In our experience in Indonesia, this is connection was established before. It's one professor that is at UGM, and it's this one connection that made a lot of things happen. It's very different to other faculties there, also simple mission, money and corruption there. He runs the student volunteering program, so he's already in that zone and he's very welcome. And he really believes in this development. So this was just one out of 1,000 potential. And I think it is finding this one individual, both in academia, or one individual that picks up a project and does 1,000 workshops. And we found Frank is there. And it is really down to a few individuals that grow the community massively, and a lot of other tests will just fail at the first contact or non-contact.
Well, I want to keep the discussion going. Actually, that's the next phase, is to get into small groups so that we can have like more faster
I'm
discussion.
sitting down.
Yeah. Thank you.